So taking pictures during the sunset is always fun. I'm on my way right now to the beach. It was expected that we might see some sun today, but seems like there is no sun. I'm looking at it outside and all I see is clouds. And I know pretty soon it is going to start raining. But I'll still take my chances and I'll go to the beach and see how it comes out. So what we will do today is set up the camera and go through the settings and see what are some of my settings that I use typically when I'm taking landscape pictures. In terms of my settings, definitely I'd like to go manual mode when I'm doing landscape photography. And even with the landscape, typically you want to keep your aperture somewhere close to between f12 to f16. The reason for that is typically your lens has a sweet spot where it will give you the sharpest picture, and that typically is about somewhere in between f12 to f16. In terms of your speed, the shutter speed, that will be decided based on the exposure that we get from outside. Typically I try to keep it the ISO as minimum as possible, obviously, to avoid any noise. So I try to keep it somewhere. My camera, I am using a D750, and my camera can go up to as low as 100 ISO 100. So I try to keep it somewhere between 100 to 100, not to exceed there, and then accordingly now adjust the third factor, which is your shutter speed. So depending on how much exposure we'll get. Now we are at the beach, and as you can see, I mean, we can see some of the sunlight, but obviously we can't see the sun. It's all cloudy, and hopefully we should be able to get some good pictures of reflection. As you can see, there is nice reflection there. So in terms of the camera setting, as you can see, this is my ISO level right there, that's 100. I'm shooting at f13, which is kind of my sweet spot for my lens, and then I need to adjust my shutter speed. Alright, so this is the setting I'm getting, is f13, shutter speed of 30, 1/30, which is basically 1/30, and then your ISO is at 100. So obviously at 1/30 I won't be able to shoot it handheld, because if I try to shoot handheld it will be all blurry. So I am using a tripod here. Now few things that you want to make sure with the tripod is, on your lens there might be a setting called vibration reduction. It's either called VR or VC. So this is the setting right there. So make sure that this setting is off. And the reason you want that off is because that is trying to reduce your vibration when you're handheld, but when you're working on a tripod, that works against you. So make sure that is off. My setting is on auto, so focus is auto. Now one thing we need to make sure is my white balance. So again you want to make sure that your white balance is adjusted properly according to the situation. So right now it is cloudy out here, although I can see some sun rays, but it's not much. So I'll adjust my white balance to make sure it is on cloudy or on cloud, which I've already done. So let's click some pictures and we'll see how they come out. Alright, so now we are done taking pictures. Let's get into the editing of pictures. What I have done is, just to save some time, I have already downloaded the pictures on my computer. So typically I download it on my hard drive and then import it in Lightroom. So now you can see all the pictures here in Lightroom. Obviously you can see I took much more pictures than what we discussed during the shoot, but again we will concentrate on one of the pictures here, which was mainly the reflection that we took initially, and edit that and see how that goes. So let's go. So this is right now I'm in my library mode here. What we will do is go in the development mode here, and so now I'm in my development mode. So as you can see, these are my presets right here, and then these are some of the settings. So what I did was, I already edited this picture here just to show the final result, and just to compare with the original picture. This is how the original looks, and then this is how the new one looks. So what we will do is, from here we will start it again. So I'll go here and down here I will reset the whole thing. So I'll click that. So that means now this is my original picture, and we will start resetting and or editing it again so that we can get that final result. Now one thing is, in my presets, these are all my presets created right here, and in these presets they are already, you can see there are a bunch of HDRs I have created. These are different types of presets that I use depending on the situation. So if I use one of my presets here, I'll get the same results, similar results right here. But I'm not going to use a preset obviously right now. What I'll do is I'll be resetting it, and then we will start from scratch, just so that we can understand the process here. So whenever I start my process or my editing, typically what I like to do is I like to see pictures, especially landscape, come out more like looking like HDR. So with a single image, sometimes it is tough to get that result, but typically for a HDR, which is high dynamic range, you need 3 images. But in this case, what we will do is, from a single image we will try to create something that looks very similar to HDR. So typically what I try to do is I start from highlights and shadows, which is one of your basic tools here, right there. So under your basic tab, which is right this, you go highlights and shadows. And sometimes if you take extreme, now this may sound insane initially, but sometimes if you take them to your extreme, which is this and this, that brings most of your all your shadows and highlights are now in part of the picture. You are not losing much, and that is the whole intent of HDR. So this will give you this is a cool trick which will give you a similar look like HDR. So once we are done with this, now the next step I like to do is first of all I'll go here and crop my picture. Now there are 2 ways of cropping it, or at least making sure your horizon line is straight here. One is I can just adjust it right here, and then rotate accordingly, so I have these grid lines which act as a reference. But if not, then I also have another tool. So let me reset this. Okay, same under same crop, I also have an angle tool, and I prefer to use that sometimes, because in this case I can draw a straight line on my horizon line right there, and then that straightens my picture. And then whatever crops, I'm losing some of the picture, but I'm not too worried about it. So I feel good about this crop right here. So all I do is press enter, and that's my frame. Now once my frame is decided, now I have the picture here. Again, I'll go through the basic settings. So as you can see, I went with highlights, I went on the extreme left. With shadows, I went extreme right to get that HDR effect from a single image. Now typically I would go to my exposure and try to see, and exposure is something that we will have to play around, go back and forth when we adjust the colors and everything too. Same with contrast. For right now I think this is good. What I want to do is maybe get some clarity. I don't go too extreme with clarity, so 10 is good here, because sometimes if you go too extreme with clarity, you start to see some noise. Now in this case, this picture was shot at ISO 100, so that is a good thing, because then at least I know the noise is not an issue. Now next thing is here right here, I'll go with vibrance. I'll try to bring some colors in, and then this is maybe too extreme. Okay, and then here is my saturation. So I'll start saturating this picture that it looks cool. All right. So as you can see here in this area of the picture, you're starting to see some good colors, and they'll pop up really good once we finish our developing. Now I still feel like this picture needs more contrast, so I know there is a contrast tab here, but then once I've done the basic, I like to go to the tone curves and then adjust remaining of the highlights and the effect of the light right here. So with the highlights, I think I'm pretty good. I think we have some highlights here. We will have to bring some more. later maybe, but then let's go to the light and dark and bring some of the contrast out of this picture. One thing also to observe is all the time is the histogram right here. I like to keep an eye on the histogram. Right now, for example, this is showing me that nothing is really on the dark side, meaning I'm not losing much on the dark side. At the same time, I'm not losing much on the bright side. Histogram is important because you're looking a picture at a screen, and sometimes on a screen you may not realize if you're losing any of the details on the dark side or bright side. So I always like to keep an eye on that. So once that is done, now let's go here. Again, we are in the tone curve. Let's go here and then start bringing some of the colors, but then also on the dark side I think it needs to go darker. So now you see that contrast effect coming in, and suddenly you see how the clouds are starting to become dramatic as well. So I'll at least go one more. Okay, alright, I like that effect. Okay, so that looks good. And then as you can see, my highlights are still good here. I can still see through them, but they are bright and nice. Alright, so once this is done, I feel like in this picture, like typically, so under this tab here, the HSL, color and black and white, you can go color by color and make them more saturated or kind of make it more brighter. You can change those colors individually. In this case, I feel that there is a good balance of colors anyways, so I won't get into individual colors at this point in this picture. Split toning, we won't worry about that one here in this case. Sharpness, I like to keep it sharper as much as possible. Obviously I don't go to extreme because then I'll start seeing some noise, but I'll keep it somewhere in close to the middle. And then in terms of noise reduction, I don't think I have to worry about that. I don't see any noise, real noise, and as I said, I have shot this at ISO 100, so I'm not too worried about the noise at this point. Lens correction, there's nothing much I would worry about there. And then the effect, so the vignette effect. So typically that's where I'll use the vignette effect to kind of darken the edges of the picture. So let's try that. Alright, so I think that kind of gives a good effect. So this is starting to look really good, where now your edges are darker, I think. And then let me just adjust the midpoint here so that it's not too extreme. Okay, that looks good, I think. And then what I'll do is, I still feel like this edge right here has a lot of light, and if I can make somehow this thing darker and maybe even slightly cooler, and then what that will do is automatically draw the attention right here. So for that, what I'll do is I'll be using the gradient tool, which is the tool right here, this tool. So let's click on the gradient tool, and let's click a new one. So this is all, so nothing is there right now, but as soon as I bring a gradient, so all I do is I selected that, I pressed on new, it is automatically new, but I just wanted to make sure that these are all centered, so I did that. And then all you do is drag it from where you want the gradient. So I want a gradient from top to bottom, so I'll do that, and keep pressing, like keep your mouse clicked, and then you'll get a gradient here. Now in this case, I want to make this area slightly darker, so what I'll do is my exposure right here, I'll just make it slightly towards the left, start dragging it until I feel it's good. Okay, so I think that is good, because you don't want to lose all the details there. You still want to keep that, but then you want it slightly darker so that all the attention is drawn towards the center. I still have details there, so I'm not too worried. Okay, so as you can see, now it's more towards the center that the eyes are getting drawn. Now let's try one more gradient. Okay, one more gradient from the bottom to top, so like that. And then same thing, what we will do is change the exposure slightly darker so that you don't lose everything, and then yeah, that looks good. Okay, all right, so now this is starting to look good. Okay, So once this is done now, I feel like most of the light, at least the brighter side, is in center. We have a good effect of like the dark effect on the edges from the bottom. I feel this is looking good, but I still feel like because this bright side goes towards here, and the eyes I think are directly going more towards that, and starting to find something here. So I think if we make this area slightly darker, I feel that will give us a better picture. So for that, what I'll do is, instead of my gradient tool, I'll be using the mask tool, which is this guy up here, this one. So with the mask tool, what you can do is you basically just mask it or brush it around, and then you can add the effect. So as you can see, under the mask tool right here, there's nothing adjusted right now. But what I'll do is, I want the exposure to slightly go down. So so now I have minus 56, which should be okay. And then what I'll do is just paint it slightly. Okay, so I feel good about this picture. Now again, because we have made a lot of changes, again I go back to my histogram, which is the top right corner here, and just make sure that everything looks okay. But I'll definitely try to get more contrast on that side too, so that there is some effect. So let me just take this slightly more towards the left, so that I'm not losing anything, but I have that effect. Okay, all right. And then again, on the bright side, which is the right side now, same thing. When you hover over this thing, the right top corner, you'll see there are some areas where we are losing some of the details. But in this case, it's all sunlight and it's not too much of area, so I'm not too worried about bringing that back. So all I would do is, in this area I want slightly more brightness, and all I'll do is just take the histogram and slide it towards the right, so that area becomes slightly more brighter. Alright, so I think I like the effect of this picture. I mean, this is starting to look really good, I feel. And I think let me compare it. If we compare it with the original picture, this was the original, and then we brought it to this picture. Hope you like the editing portion of it, and I had to go real quick just to make sure this doesn't become a too long video. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, by the way. I mean, there are more videos coming, and if you have any questions on the editing or any other details on how this picture was taken, please don't forget to comment, and make sure you like the video and like my channel. Again, this is Asim Gupta from Shutterclick, and have a good day.